Hello and welcome to Unacademy's new initiative. My name is Harshmeet Singh and I will be here every single day at 9 am from today onwards to analyze the most important news stories on the Hindu newspaper. Now, I don't need to remind you how important the Hindu newspaper is, and that is why we will be analyzing it in detail, picking out the most important news stories from both the prelims and the mains examination point of view. But please understand, this is not any other Hindu analysis. We will be doing two important things here. First, we will be going beyond the write-up. Means we will not just be focusing on what the article says, rather we will also be taking important information beyond this article so that you can understand this topic in a much more holistic manner. Secondly, at the end of the session, we will also have a quiz based on whatever we have discussed here. So do stay tuned till the very end to make sure that you have learned each and everything and you can test your knowledge. Now, with that out of the way, these are the articles that we will be discussing today. So, a lot of important articles about India's industry, lack of innovation, how India can play a major supplier of workforce to the world. Then there's an article about the Supreme Court's gag order. That is, the Supreme Court's order saying that YouTuber Ranveer Labadia cannot put any more videos on YouTube until this matter concludes, and there are many other articles about USAID, etc. Let's begin with the very first one then without any further delay. The first article is about Indian industry and its need for innovation. Now, there is no surprise, and everyone knows this, that when you look at our industry, specifically the manufacturing sector, India lags behind many other countries in terms of innovation. Now, when we talk about innovation, we mean to include AI, we mean to include robotics, we mean to include the state-of-the-art manufacturing, be it chip industry, etc. In all of those aspects, India has not been able to keep a pace with the world. This is what this article explores. It talks about why is it that India faces these disadvantages and what can we do going forward. So the gist of the article, as I told you, is how the Indian industries have not embraced innovation as quickly as the other countries have. The author points out that India still focuses on cheap labor. Means when our industries, our industrialists actually want to expand, rather than looking into adapting technology which is by far the most efficient in the world, they look for cheaper labor to reduce their cost. Now please understand this. If you are manufacturing something, there are two ways in which you can reduce your cost. Number one, you can deploy technology, better machinery, robotics, AI, so that your production cost decreases. On the other hand, the other thing that you can do is, rather than saying that, okay, I will invest in machinery or technology, you keep on investing in cheaper and cheaper labor. You will say, I will pay lesser money to my labor so that my cost of production decreases. The author says the second option is the one which most of the Indian industries have taken up, which is why we have not been able to keep up pace with the rest of the world when it comes to innovation in industry. Sectors such as garment, IT, manufacturing, which have been India's backbone or our backbone of our industrial growth, have not really been able to include and inculcate technology as much as we would. For example, the author says, our garment export market share has stagnated at 3.1% over past 2 decades. Now, if you look at developed countries, you go to a European country, you go to America, and when you go to their high-end stores and just look at any of the garment and look at where it is made, the tag that it has, you'll be surprised to see a lot of them will carry a tag which is made in Bangladesh or made in Vietnam. So while garment industry is something that India was extremely proud of, even here, we have been left behind by the likes of Vietnam and Bangladesh. The reason being that they have invested a lot more in technology. They have made much better policies to encourage their industry to make much robust growth here, which India has not been able to do. India thought that because we have a lot of labor available, we would be able to push a lot of garment manufacturing. That has not happened. Whenever there are any negative news stories about China, our first assumption is that, oh, now companies will leave China and they will come to India. But that is a wrong assumption. Why do we assume that they would come to India when they have much better opportunities to grow in countries such as Vietnam and Bangladesh? This is what is happening. China's garment industry, for example, has been automating production at a very, very fast pace. So what is happening is because they have machines doing most of the job rather than humans, their cost of production has come down immensely. Which is why, for the global market, China still remains a much more attractive manufacturing hub and not India. And this is where India needs to do better. Apart from this, the author says that it's not just about technology, it's also about the kind of work ethics that we have. For example, the author says that big corporations in India, the big companies, delay payment to small and medium enterprises. Now, you would have seen multiple times the government, the Prime Minister himself, talking a lot about the MSME sector. MSME sector, that is a medium, small, micro enterprise sector, is the backbone of Indian industry. The majority of our workforce is still employed in the MSME sector. Now, those companies don't have a lot of capital in their hand. So if they have to venture into manufacturing, they're dependent on the banks. And when they sell something, they don't get cash payment. When they sell something to a bigger company, the bigger company actually delays their payment time and time again. That is what hurts them even more. They don't have formal credit. The government has started many schemes that you would know for the MSME sector to give them access to credit from the banks. The government has launched many schemes also, but these have not resulted in the kind of change that we expected on the ground. Also, the one wrong assumption that we have in India is that working for longer hours means more productivity. Now, I don't need to tell you this. In the past few months, there has been such a big debate in the country about how many hours one should work. Narendra Modi started it by saying 70 hours a week should be the minimum. And then there are many other industrial leaders that have jumped in and said that we should work longer hours if we have to compete with other countries. Youth of the country obviously does not really relate to it. Many of them criticize Mr. Narendra Modi as well. It has been proven beyond doubt that the number of hours that you work does not mean that you are more productive. For example, see the data presented here. In US, an average worker works for 38 hours a week. In Japan, the average worker does not even work for 37 hours a week. In India, the average worker works for 46.7 hours a week. Now, would you think that an Indian worker is more productive than the one in Japan or China or US? Do you think our productivity is better than them? Obviously not. Which means that there is no direct connection between the number of working hours and the productivity that you are getting at the end of the day. Rather, you would see countries such as Germany and Japan reducing working hours. Japan is introducing 4 days a week work schedule. In India, 5 days a week also is a luxury. In most of the companies, you don't get a week off, or even if you do, you get 1 day off in the entire week. But these are the countries which are actually going away from long working hours. So, doesn't mean that they're not producing enough. They are producing enough. That is why there is no connection between productivity on one side and on the other side having your number of working hours increased. Now, this is what the article told about. Now, as I told you, we will not just be restricting ourselves to what the article says. We'll also be going beyond the article. So, I have a few important bits of information for you. First, look at some of the models that other countries have adopted so that we can also learn from it. Now, Germany is a well-recognized force when it comes to high quality manufacturing, innovation manufacturing. Germany has a model called Mittelstand. Now, if my pronunciation is not right, I apologize. If anyone from Germany is watching, please do correct me. Now, Mittelstand basically stands for those companies that are SMEs, so small medium enterprises, just like MSMEs in India. However, what Germany has done is they have made sure that their policies push these companies to specialize in automation, robotics, AI manufacturing, rather than our MSMEs that are still focusing on things such as garment, etc. China, on the other hand, has also progressed immensely well in high-tech manufacturing. By 2023, 85% of their factories incorporated automation, while the number is only 27% in India. Now, it all boils down to how much you are spending in research and development, R&D. Our expenditure in research and development is extremely low when it compared to other countries such as Israel or South Korea. South Korea spends 4.5% of its GDP in research and development. In India, not even 1%. The more that you spend on research and development, the more are the chances that you will come up with cutting edge technology. That is a big problem that we have. Also, we have ignored the role of AI and other important technology in manufacturing. For example, AI and automation can increase efficiency by 40% as per proven report, but we have not been adopting it. The government of India last year launched India AI mission to enable AI based manufacturing, but again, most of the companies have not given it the kind of importance and have not adopted it at a pace that we had hoped for. This is where we are lacking. This was our first article. Before we go ahead, a few important reminders for all of you. You all know the importance of current affairs. You all know it gets extremely difficult to catch up on the current affairs of the entire year. For that, we have for you our current affair magazines and notes. These are available to you on Unacademy platforms. These include weekly news analysis, NCRT notes summaries, previous year questions, and much more. To get any other information about it, you can call on this number or visit our website that is present here. Also, if you're interested in having the most comprehensive preparation ever on the offline mode, we have multiple centers where new batches are starting very soon. At the Karol Bagh Center, the new batch starts on the 3rd of March. Mukherjee Nagar Center, 4th of March is the beginning date of the new session. Then we also have our sessions, that is centers at Prayagraj, Patna. The starting dates are mentioned right in front of you. If you have any question about any of these, the number is given right in front of you. Do call on that number and get yourself enrolled as soon as possible. Let's move on to the second article then. The second article talks about talent shortage at the global scale, and this is India's opportunity. The gist of the article is that globally, if you look at a lot of countries that are developed nations, their population is declining. Look at Japan, look at Germany, look at Italy, etc. Means in these countries, they do not have enough people to work for them. So they need good, trained and intelligent workforce that can fill in those shoes. And this is where India can come in. The Prime Minister also, as you know, has talked multiple times about how can we be a net exporter of skilled labor. However, there are still some pitfalls, there are still some issues because of which we have not been able to capture that opportunity. This is what the article talks about. The article bases itself on a report recently released by FICCI KPMG. The report is titled Global Mobility of Indian Workforce. The report says that the demand for skilled workers across the sectors will go over 85.2 million, means over 8.5 crore by 2030. And if these seats are not fulfilled, if these positions remain vacant, if we won't have enough workers, we would lead to a loss of close to $8.5 trillion of the world economy. This is where India has to step in. Because the world is now facing shortage of laborers, we have to step in. Now, do you see the contrast between the first two articles? The first article says that we have to adopt more technology. Second article says that we are short of labor. That also tells you that increment and adopting new technology does not mean that the labor will go away. It does not mean that the jobs are going away. The jobs will still remain. It is just that the technology and jobs, that is manual jobs, have to go hand in hand. As per the same report, it says that the key sectors that will be affected due to shortage of labor include healthcare, technology, manufacturing, construction. This is where India can and should pitch in if we have to make sure that our labor force gets the respect and the opportunities that they deserve. Now, the article says that India is uniquely placed as one of the largest, youngest pool of educated workers in the world. Around the world, the demand for Indian workers is extremely high. Countries such as Australia, European countries, especially countries in the Gulf, all of these countries have extremely high demand of Indian workers because they know that the work ethics, language, skill is at par with what they want. Yes, there is also some lack of skills that can be enhanced, but at least right now there is a large demand of these workers. I'll give you one more example. Remember when Israel-Hamas war started, a lot of workers from Palestine that used to work, from the Gaza that used to work in Israel, they left their jobs. So Israel had a shortage of laborers. They asked India and thousands of Indian youth were sent to Israel to work. So India is a net provider of workforce to the entire world. However, it's not that easy. It's not that all the seats are being filled by Indian workers only. The author here talks about 4 big problems, the 4 big barriers which are stopping India from being this big global supplier of workforce. First barrier, the author says, is regulatory and immigration barrier. For example, one of the biggest exports that India have is nurses and medical professionals such as doctors. The author says that Indian medical doctors, Indian nurses don't get work permits in European countries because there's a qualification mismatch. Means they don't recognize the degrees and the diplomas that we have given. While our nurses are in huge demand in the Gulf countries, they don't get to work in European countries because their degrees are not recognized. Then there are issues that you also would have heard about: human trafficking, malpractices in Gulf countries. You would have heard these stories that many people who go to work to Saudi Arabia, UAE, their passports are taken away or they can't really leave, they are held captive. These issues still remain. Lack of Indian degrees, I told you. You can ask any friend of yours, for example, let's say who has gone to US. The interesting part is, if let's say you have a bachelor's degree from India and you want to work in US or European countries, let's say, in European countries, when you try to find job, they will say we don't recognize your degree. But if you want to say, or if you say, okay, I'll do master's degree from here, then they will recognize your bachelor degree from India. So it's very unique or weird that if you are paying a fee to them and you are saying, okay, I will do a master's course from here, then they'll recognize your bachelor's degree. If you're asking for a job, then they will not recognize it. This is the difference. Then there are language barriers. See, India has one of the largest English-speaking workforce in the entire world. But when it comes to non-speaking countries such as Germany, Japan, Italy, we do have an issue. And that is why you will see Indian diaspora not being present in large numbers in these countries. And this is where we also have to work. These are the 4 key barriers that the author has identified in India becoming this global supplier of workforce. However, now let's go beyond this write-up and see what are the other initiatives being taken, what has the government done, and what is it that we can do going forward. So, the author only talks about the problems. Let's talk about the solutions now. What has been done and what can we do going forward? Now, there are a few things that the Indian government has done. For example, we have struck multiple bilateral agreements, trade deals. We have struck agreements with Australia, with UAE. We are in the process of finalizing a free trade agreement with UK as well. In these free trade agreements, India tries to recognize workforce cooperation as well, so that our workforce is given the kind of respect that they deserve in other countries. This is one way forward. Second, India has to focus much more on developing skills. For example, we have the Pravasi Kaushal Vikas Yojana, we have the National Skill Development Corporation. Both of these are aimed at training Indian workforce for international jobs in different sectors. And NSDC specifically has been working on programs in UK, Japan, Germany to train people on the skills that are required in these countries. We also have a data platform for international workers placement. These are called e-migrate system, overseas worker welfare fund. So it's not that we don't have initiatives in place, but the problem and the scale of the problem is so huge that it cannot be solved just by a few minimal things. These are some of the international practices which we can learn from. Germany, for example, offers vocational training apprenticeship programs for foreign workers so that they can be trained as per the German standards. Canada has a point-based immigration system. For example, let's say if you want to go to Canada, they will give you points. So points on the basis of, let's say, graduation. If you are graduate or postgraduate, then you'll get certain number of points. If some of your family members already live in Canada, then you get certain number of points. So you add up all those points and then it is decided if you are able to pass the cutoff or not to be in Canada. South Korea has very strict regulation against worker exploitation. All these things India can learn from. This is where you can also quote these in the mains examination as well, where India can actually take advantage of these practices around the entire world. There are some other recommendations that you can write in these kind of questions. First, India can work with other countries to recognize Indian degrees. As I told you, non-recognizing our degrees is a big problem that we have around the world. We have to convince other countries of the quality of education that we have. We have to ensure better protection for our migrant workers and bring in private sector as much as possible. For example, the National Skill Development Corporation has partnered with TCS to train IT professionals. Maybe we can do more such partnerships to bring our workforce to the world at a level that they are looking for. Coming on to the article number 3. The third article is about the Supreme Court's order called the gag order. Now, what is a gag order? Gag order is simply such kind of an order which actually puts certain restrictions on you, which certainly puts restriction on your freedom of speech. Now, I don't have to tell you the recent controversy involving Samirena and Real Abadi. I'm sure all of you are aware of it. That controversy, especially what happened there, is not relevant to us. The outcome of it and what happens in Supreme Court, that is more relevant for us. So, what the Supreme Court has said recently is, Ranveer Labadiya went to Supreme Court saying that a lot of FIRs are being filed against me in multiple parts of the country. Please make sure that I only have to report to one place and not at multiple places. So if you can merge all the FIRs, Supreme Court has said that okay, new FIRs will not be registered, but the Supreme Court has said that for now you cannot post any new episode on your YouTube or on your other channels. This is a kind of freedom of speech being restricted. Also, since this person involved is a YouTuber, so this person's profession also is podcasting or putting out videos. So when you are restricting this person's freedom of speech and expression, or when you are telling this person you can't post videos, you're not just restricting their freedom of speech, you're also restricting their freedom of employment or freedom to work. This is where this has become slightly controversial. Now, please understand, interestingly, in the past, Supreme Court has been very liberal with these kind of things. Usually you see when someone speaks against the government, high courts may restrict the personal freedom of speech, but in most cases the Supreme Court does not. The Supreme Court uses this kind of restriction very, very, very rarely. In the past, we have not seen Supreme Court using it very often. Rather, they actually go against it. So, Supreme Court has given this order. This is called again a gag order. Gag order means restricting a freedom of speech and expression. And the lawyer of Mr. Alavadia says that this is also an attempt to restrict his freedom to livelihood, because again this is his livelihood. Now, let's take an example of a few important cases in this regard that have happened in the past regarding Supreme Court's gag order. So, there was a case in 2021 called Rehana Fatima case. In this, the Kerala High Court barred, that is the High Court, had given the gag order against a women rights activist expressing her views on social media. So Kerala High Court had said that this activist cannot post on social media. Supreme Court, however, struck that down. Said that no, this should not be allowed. You cannot restrict someone's freedom of speech and expression. Something similar happened in Mohammed Zubair case versus the state of UP, where the founder of Alt News, that is a fact-checking website, was restricted, or what UP government rather wanted to restrict his freedom of speech and expression. They wanted to restrict him from putting content. Supreme Court rejected the request. Supreme Court said this will be unconstitutional. So, in most of these cases, you will see Supreme Court supporting the freedom of speech and expression, not issuing a gag order, reversing a gag order. So, this is very rare that the Supreme Court actually goes in favor of a gag order. Now, what is the context of it? Let's go beyond the article and understand where does it stand, what happens in other countries in such scenarios. So, if you look at global practices, issue of criticizing the government or speaking something bad in the society, it's not a very new issue. It happens around the entire world. In the US, there are strong presumptions against prior restraint. Means, if you want to restrain some person from putting something online, it has to be done only under very, very, very strict scenarios. In UK, gag orders are allowed only when national security is at risk. In India, we do have Article 19 that talks about freedom of speech and expression, but gag orders have been issued in the past. A landmark case in this regard was Express Newspaper versus the Union of India, where the Supreme Court said that strong safeguards against gag orders have been put in place. Gag orders will only be issued in case of defamation, national security, or contempt of court. That is why, as I said, Supreme Court does not use it very often in India. Now, there's always a big debate about your freedom of speech and the restrictions that can be imposed by the judiciary. Article 19 gives the freedom of speech and expression, but as you know, fundamental rights are not absolute. Especially Article 19 is not absolute. It does put certain restrictions. Restrictions such as public order, defamation, contempt of court, etc. These things, if you violate any of these, your freedom of speech can be curtailed. And this is what has happened in this case as well. So freedom of speech in India is not absolute. You have seen many people filing defamation cases, especially politicians filing defamation cases if you criticize them. This is how India practices the balance between freedom of speech and restrictions. These are certain recommendations for protecting freedom of speech in the future that you can write in the answer as well. Have better judicial training of understanding the judges or making them understand how digital content works so that they are also up to date with the entire context of it. Have standard guidelines for such orders. These cannot be or should not be randomly interpreted by the judges, and provide protection for digital content creators. Means if content creators are putting out something, they should have certain protection available to them. All these are guidelines or all these are recommendations that you can put in your answer. The next article that we have here is with regards to USAID. Now, USAID has been a lot in the news. As you know, USAID stands for United Nations Agency for International Development. The background context is when Donald Trump became the American president, he said that we are wasting a lot of money, we have to stop wastage of money, for which he founded a new department called DOGE. This department tried to curtail government expenditure. One of the first things they did was they cut down the spending of USAID. So USAID, that is a US agency for international development that spends a lot of money worldwide to help for important causes, including in India as well, health, education, sanitation, etc. Their funding was cut short drastically. That was the first news, but it did not pertain to India directly. How it pertained to India was a few days back a news came out that last year they had spent $21 million in India in the name of increasing voter turnout. Means USAID spent this much money to convince more people to go out and vote in the country. This is being seen by India as an interference in our election. This is why now USAID has a direct connection with India. A recent report says that USAID funded 7 projects worth $750 million in India in the financial year 2023-24. Now again, this is not surprising because as I said, USAID does work in a lot of different areas: agriculture, health, water management, renewable energy, and most of them have gotten positive results for India. For example, our polio aid program, green revolution, all of these have seen considerable investment from USAID. So this is not shady. The shady part is this 21 million voter turnout expenditure that even the current US president says that it was not used in the best possible way. This is again why the headline has been discussed across the entire country and the entire world. If you look at the background of USAID, it was set up in 1961 by then American President John F. Kennedy, and this was a way of taking forward the American diplomacy. See, this was the era of the Cold War where US and USSR were trying to attract countries to their camp. So it was a USA attempt to attract countries towards their side by helping them with all these initiatives. Many countries do that. India, for example, we also have something called ITEC. Now, under the ITEC, we also help a lot of countries in Asia, in Africa with development, offering them scholarships, offering them loans, offering them grants, training their farmers, etc. So it's not something that is new. Many countries do that. Just that because America is such a huge country, they do that on a much higher scale. Now, if you go beyond this article, beyond the write-up, you will see that in the past, as I said, they have helped India in many ways on good initiatives. The polio campaign, even COVID-19, a lot of import of cylinders, oxygen concentrators was done through the US aid funds. Women empowerment initiatives have also been taken, have also been financed by USAID in the past. Now, this is also not the first time that this has been slightly controversial, that is USAID. In many countries, USAID has been banned. Russia has banned it. Many South American countries have banned USAID. Their argument is that USAID uses foreign money to interfere in our country. India also has a law called FCRA, Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. Under FCRA, India regulates foreign funding coming to our NGOs. As you would have noticed, a lot of NGOs have been banned in India in the past few years because there were allegations that they were using foreign funds to destabilize the government or to work against the Indian interest. So USAID was in the news slightly earlier as well on allegation that they may be funding some of the Indian NGOs which are working against the government. So this is not the first time that USAID has become controversial in India. PM's advisor, Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal, also called it a big scam that is spending a lot of this money in India, because no sovereign country would like interference in our election, and none of all, India obviously would not want that to happen. This is an example of how US aid in the past has been controversial, banned in Russia, banned in many other countries such as Venezuela as well, because there have been allegations that US aid has been using a lot of money to destabilize countries that are not in good terms with the US. So India has not seen this interference till now, but this news report of election voter turnout, this has sent certain issues. This has opened up certain issues between the two countries. The next article is about the RBI infusing a lot more dollars into the economy. So recently the RBI infused $10 billion into the Indian market. Now this is a very common exercise. Now please understand, RBI, Reserve Bank of India, maintains foreign reserves, or in short, as you call them, forex. So these foreign reserves of forex, most of that is in gold, dollars, or other currency around the world. They maintain a good chunk of it. For example, it's about $630 billion that they maintain. The purpose is that they can use that to decide or to ensure that inflation does not go very high. They decide how much money has to be kept in the market. When the market has shortage of dollars, then they infuse that money in the market. When the market has too much money, then they will take it back from the market, absorb it. So this is a very common exercise. So what RBI has done in this is they have injected $10 billion. How? Injected means they just sold it in return for Indian rupee. Now, what will it do? It will make sure that the banks have better liquidity in the long run. This is being done because in the past few days or past few weeks rather, you have seen a lot of US dollars going out of India. Ever since Donald Trump has become the American president, he has been introducing tariffs on multiple countries. That has led to weakening of other currencies and strengthening of the dollar. Now, if that trend goes on, Indian rupee will reach 100 per dollar very soon, which we do not want. That is why, to stabilize Indian currency, this has been done. Now, again, this is not a very drastic measure. It does happen regularly. For example, Jan 31, the RBI had infused about $5 billion in the market. Now, again, take this in the context of RBI having forex reserve worth about $640 billion just a couple of months back. So this is not such a this is not such a huge difference as such. $5 and $10 billion. The RBI does keep on doing that. Now, if you go beyond this short article, why is it that it is done? As I told you, foreign investors pulled out $31 billion from Indian equity market. See, foreign investors, especially in the stock market, are not very stable. Wherever they think they will get higher margin, they'll pull out the money and go to that country. So if they think that their money is safer in the US, so they'll get more money in the US, they will go in the US. That's why Indian rupee depreciated over 3% against the US, and which is why RBI has sold significant amount of forex reserves, so that when more dollar goes into the market, the price of rupee will stabilize. It will not depreciate so quickly. Historically also it has been done. Donald Trump, when he became the president the first time in 2019, also RBI had done similar kind of a thing. So it's not very odd. It does happen from a time to time basis whenever the RBI thinks that there is a need to do it. When the dollar is getting too strong or Indian rupee is depreciating, it's a pretty common exercise. The economic impact, it will increase the liquidity in the market. That will also encourage people to invest more money. That will, because more money is in the market, banks will be able to give loan in an easier manner. It will lead to more employment. It will lead to better growth of salary also. That is the expectation that will happen, because when we have extra liquidity, money supply becomes easier. On the other hand, too much money in the market can also lead to inflation. So we have to be careful about that. The last article that we have for today's analysis is about the UGC-CARE list of journals being discontinued. Now, UGC is University Grants Commission. Now, what exactly is this issue? So, UGC sometime back in 2018, started something called CARE, that is Consortium for Academic and Research Ethics. So basically, what exactly is this? UGC said some years back, 2018, that we will compile a list of top quality journals, high quality journals. Journal means these magazines which publish academic articles. This list, that is a CARE list, will be published by UGC, so that the authors that are writing in this are preferred when it comes to giving jobs in universities. So when universities are hiring for professors and other important people, they want to get people on board who are very well known, who are very respected, who are very learned in their subject. So how do you identify them? UGC said we'll prepare a list of these journals. Whoever has published their work in that journal, they should be preferred, so that it's kind of a certificate that you are well known in your field. However, UGC has discontinued that. That is a problem. Why has it been discontinued? This is what the gist of the article is. So as I said, this UGC-CARE list was introduced in 2018 to help with faculty selection, to help with their promotion, etc. But now they have removed it. Rather, they have introduced a new list or replaced it with a list called suggestive parameters that we will suggest. Why? Now universities will have much more autonomy in choosing which journals do they want to see. Earlier, when the UGC gave a list, universities were not happy. They thought we are restricted. We are now being restricted and you have to choose people from this list only. Now what will happen as a result of this? They will have much more options. They will have many more options to choose from. This is what will happen. This is what the other universities have now liked. Now, the reason why they have discontinued is that there was over centralization. That is, UGC was taking matters in its own hand, and many good quality Indian journals were not in that list. So there were protests from other universities that certain journals that we like should be in that list also. Now, also, this kind of a decision to take back such a list has its own problems. You may see substandard faculties being appointed now. You may see substandard journals now. You may see something called predatory journal. Now, predatory journals again are journals that are not high quality, that may publish articles in exchange for money without any peer-to-peer review, without any proper background research. These journals accept low-quality research paper, as I told you. They are globally renowned database, but again, India does not have such a database. So many countries have these kind of database where they have assured of a certain amount of quality, they have assured of certain standard, but in India, we do not follow that. That is where the UGC has to work better. In 2023, there was a study that found 15% of UGC approved journals were engaged in questionable publishing practices. So it's not that UGC is 100% right. Even in the past, the list that they have given have not always been true, have not always had top-notch content. If you look at other global practices, in America, they have peer-reviewed journals indexed in journals such as Scopus, Web of Science. UK also has something called Research Excellence Framework. In India, we are moving towards decentralized journalization. Means rather than UGC having a list of best journals in a centralized approach, we are leaving it to the universities. We are going towards a decentralized approach, which is kind of opposite to most countries around the world. This was our newspaper analysis for the day. I really hope that it was helpful for you. To test your knowledge, let's see if you are able to answer these questions or not. So I have first few questions from the prelims examination point of view. Which of the following factors hinder, that is, stops India's garment export competitiveness? Over-reliance on cheap labor, lack of automation in manufacturing, delayed financial support for SMEs. Think about it. Which of these factors? All of them. We have discussed this. All of these are problems because of which our garment export has not been up to the mark as much as we would want. Next. Which countries successfully transitioned from low-wage industries to high-tech manufacturing? Bangladesh, South Korea, Pakistan or Sri Lanka? Again, low-wage industry to high-tech manufacturing. There's only one country in this list that does high-tech manufacturing right now. That is South Korea. The others are still into garment, etc., apparels, but not into high-tech manufacturing. Which of the following countries has the fastest growing demand for skilled Indian workers? China, Australia, Brazil, Russia. As I told you, Indians are the most in demand in English-speaking countries because the language barrier is still lower. The answer is Australia. It is Australia where Indians are in the highest demand amongst these set of countries. Next. Which of the following cases dealt with the issue of prior restraint on free speech? Keshwanda Bharati, Express newspapers, Menka Gandhi, Minerva Mills. All are very, very important cases. We discussed today, it is the Express newspapers case 1958, where the issue of free speech was being dealt by the Supreme Court. What is the major risk of discontinuing centralized research journal regulation? Decline in faculty salaries, rise in predatory journals, increased government control, closure of state universities. Which one is it? We discussed in detail. Rise of predatory journals. Because of this can be a major destructive outcome of this move by the UGC. Then these are questions for the mains examination point of view, which you can try and answer in about 200 words each. See if you are able to get enough content for that. This brings me to the end of today's session. I really hope it was helpful. Do join me tomorrow as well at 9 a.m. And if you're new here, do hit the like and the subscribe button. My name is Harshmeet Singh. Thank you. Bye-bye. Jai Hind.